Dean Phillips from New York came out and said, hey, Governor Hochul, you should pardon President Trump since you're the governor of New York. And then some are saying Joe Biden may come out and pardon President Trump. And then Trump just came out and said this, I think this is yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, the sentencing for not having done anything wrong will be conveniently for the fascists 4 days before the RNC, a radical left Soros-backed DA who ran on a platform of I will get Trump, reporting on a acting local judge appointed by the Democrats who is highly conflicted, will make a decision which will determine the future of our nations. The United States Supreme Court must decide, right? Mm-hmm. So you got three things going on here. Some people on the left are saying Joe Biden should come out and pardon Trump. That may actually be a good look for Biden if he did that, because it's kind of like showing, hey, I don't think this is fair. America's bigger than this. And even though he's my opponent, we don't agree on a lot of things. I'm willing to come out and do this because I think we need to compete fairly. That can actually show strength if he does that. Chance of him doing that, less than 10%, right? Hochul coming out, Phillips coming out and saying, hey, you should pardon him, right? Dean Phillips, I think he wanted to be a president, or he's a candidate or he's not. I don't know if he's still a candidate or not. And then Trump asking Supreme Court. What do you think will happen, and what do you think is the right move here?
What will happen, I don't think Joe Biden's going to pardon him. I don't think Governor Hochul will pardon him. I think they have a plan. They, being the radical left, have a plan in place to try to steamroll their way through these elections through 2024. And I think that they're going to stick with the plan that they have, which is prosecute him as much as possible. As far as anyone stopping them or limiting that in some way, the courts of appeals and ultimately the Supreme Court, how quickly the trial team gets through that process or straight to the Supreme Court, depending on what they do. I think the left has put us in a position where you have conservatives that need to be very strong and very confident in their decisions and not bowing to the press and not bowing to the political pressure. And I think that's a hard decision for a lot of conservatives to make at this moment. So I don't know what they're going to do. So
here's a question. The reason why I'm asking this is, remember how Colorado, hey, we're not going to put him on the ballot. Trump's not going to be on the ballot. And okay, this other state's following it, and that other state's following, and then Supreme Court said, relax, not happening. Trump's going to be on the ballot. Mm-hmm. Okay. Everybody kind of like, no, you can't do this. How different is this for Supreme Court to come in and say, what are you guys doing? This is ridiculous. None of these 34 counts is going to count. None of this. Supreme Court's, leave it alone. You guys cannot do this. How different is this case versus the Colorado case?
So in Colorado, if the Supreme Court had allowed states to say who can be on the ballot and who cannot be on the ballot, you would have had a split of 24 states that come out and say Joe Biden's an insurrectionist, Joe Biden, and they all would have done it, and it would have, the election would not function. So the Supreme Court really had to say, no, you can't do this, to make sure that the states don't all fall apart and we descend into just the divided states of America. You don't really have that in this New York case, because it's a criminal case on whether he committed 34 felonies or not. It doesn't set necessarily a precedent. The precedent it's setting is that you can prosecute a former president, but it's not setting a precedent of what other states can do. Does that make sense?
So what Trump is asking for here, Rob, if you can go back to that tweet, what Trump is asking for here at the end when he says the United States Supreme Court must decide, meaning how are you preventing me from campaigning 4 days before? Can the Supreme Court get a hold of the judge in New York and say, what the hell are you doing, or no?
I don't think they would do that. How
do you interpret what the president is saying here? Maybe it's my English as a fifth language that's messing me up.
I interpret that as his trial team has a strategy to appeal to the Supreme Court, and I think he likes their strategy. And it sounds like it's a good, he's pleased with it, and they plan on doing. That's the way I read that. I don't know. I'm not read in on it. But when I read that, I think, okay, they have a plan on appealing.
What do you How do you read it, Tom?
I read it that his team is probably at this moment preparing, what is it called, an amicus brief that they present to the Solicitor General to get the court to consider it, or am I getting this wrong? But I would believe that they are preparing their brief for the Solicitor General. Now, what order must that happen, right? There's an order to things. And won't the court say, this is the job of the Circuit Court of Appeals now? Or this is, actually, if it's in New York State, this is the job of New York Supreme Court. Wouldn't it be first?
Sure, if they're going through the regular appeals process. However, and I don't know what his trial team is doing or planning, but there are other causes of action that they could try to appeal directly to the Supreme Court. It sounds like that they might try to take it wouldn't be the appeals process of this case. It would be a separate cause of action directly to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, like a couple things happened these last few years where you realized the most powerful person in the world isn't the president. The most powerful community are those 9 Supreme Court justices, right? They have the power. That's why when he flipped 3 seats in one term was like, you got to be kidding me, right? If Hillary would have won and she would have flipped it, can you imagine what America would have looked like today?
Well, I think that's what they were planning on doing.
I know.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, though, the fact that I think we learned the power of Supreme Court. I'm wondering if the Supreme Court can come in and impose themselves here and say, you're kind of getting involved in the election. Step this one out. You're making us look like idiots, and our founding fathers would be embarrassed with the kind of behavior we have in America. I don't know.
Well, I think that's true. Don't forget their term ends at the end of June. So we'll find out in a couple weeks, how this is all going to play out.
Whose term ends?
The Supreme Court.
Oh, okay.
Supreme Court session, they hear...
I'm sorry, their session, yeah.
Yeah, the solicitor receives everything around Valentine's Day, and then we hear all these answers throughout the springtime, and then they go on summer vacation, and they do not convene, nor do they hear. And they are a petitioned. I think it's on the building of the Supreme Court out in front. It says, the only petition beyond this court is to God, or something like that. It says top of the building. So, Pat, the Supreme Court would not go out and do anything, but they would have to be petitioned very rapidly to intervene here.
So, in other words, likelihood of anything happening to both of you is slim to none.
Something happening from the Supreme Court?
Right.
It's not slim to none. They would have to do it real
Quickly.
fast. Yeah.
They did it pretty quickly with Colorado, though, right? I mean, it felt like it was like bam, bam, bam. And it was like, okay, old story, everybody moved on. Nobody was talking about it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's still likely that they could do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Do they have the authority to do that, to call on New York and to make that kind of a decision?
Well, I don't think they'd be calling on New York. There would be a separate appeal, and I don't know what cause of action or under what legal theory they're considering, but it wouldn't be to the New York court. It would just be separate to the Supreme Court, and they would answer it.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.